First aid in the workplace. First aid requirements vary from one workplace to the next, depending on the nature of work, the types of hazards, the workplace size, location and number of workers. These factors are taken into account when deciding what first aid arrangements and facilities need to be provided, along with adhering to the Australian Resuscitation Council guidelines and the relevant state and territory legislation. When they are developed, policies and procedures for first aid in the workplace take into account relevant legislation, such as acts, regulations and codes of practice. They provide information on providing first aid, incidents and emergency plans. Codes of practice are practical guides under the Work Health and Safety Act and regulations in the workplace. The First Aid in the Workplace Code of Practice provides information using a risk management approach for first aid. For example, to identify, assess and manage hazards. It also provides guidelines on the requirements for first aid training, facilities, and the content and number of first aid kits. Legislation requires all workplaces to have a first aid kit that is stored in an accessible and clearly marked location. The number of kits, the content, and the size will vary depending on the number of workers and the type of industry. Communication. A first aider will be required to communicate in many different ways. It may be directly with the casualty, their relatives, parents or carers. It may be to bystanders, asking for assistance, consulting with witnesses, calling emergency services, or providing a verbal handover to paramedics or ambulance officers. No matter what the situation, effective communication is of the utmost importance. The aim is to gain trust, provide reassurance, and get others to assist you. Those assisting will need clear direction and coordination. Whilst communicating, you will need to be aware of cultural and age differences and the appropriate ways to respond. Sending for help. Stay calm. Call from a safe place. Select the service required. Provide your location. Follow instructions. 000 is the Australian primary emergency number for all telephones, landlines, mobile phones and payphones. For 000 calls off a mobile phone, you're required to have reception. 112 is an international standard emergency number. It automatically translates to the emergency number of the country the caller is in. 106 is a text-based emergency call service for people who are deaf or have a hearing or speech impairment.